For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. And he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds will he repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense, so shall they fear the name of the Lord. From the west in his glory, from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood. The Spirit of the Lord shall raise a standard against him, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion.
Hello, good morning, welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. Continuing in the book of Isaiah, we're still in chapter 24. We've really just begun this chapter, and we hear how the Lord is going to make the earth empty and make it waste. All right, there we go. In verse 3, the last one we covered, I believe, the land shall be utterly emptied, utterly spoiled, for the Lord hath spoken this word. And that's the general theme of this, is the emptying of the land. As God had promised, the Israelites would be carried away into captivity by the Assyrians and subsequently by the Babylonians. And of course, that's not the only captivity the Jews have had to endure. The earth mourneth and fadeth away. The world languisheth and fadeth away. The haughty people of the earth do languish. The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Therefore hath the curse devoured the earth, and they that dwell therein are desolate. Therefore the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. Hold on there. So we have this personification of the world as the earth is portrayed as having human emotion, mourning, fading away. A lot of times this device is used because obviously it's the world's languishing under the people. The people defile the land, the earth. In this context, the word may be interchangeable, meaning that of course this has a context in the time that Isaiah was writing of the captivities he's expecting and of the transgressions that he's observed. And he's mostly focused on the land of Israel. Just as God's salvation is focused in the Old Testament on the nation Israel, but in the New Testament it gets open and broadened. So also the prophecy gets open and broadened and applies to more than just Israel and more than just the land of Canaan. But when human beings exist in the world, they have an effect. I mean, we do things. We buy things. We sell things. We build. We plant. But this idea that our presence defiles. That almost makes me think of the way that sometimes I'll hear environmentalists talk about human beings. There's an almost sacred view of the planet itself, in which they look at it as being sacred, and our activities, like our buildings and stuff, they see as like defilements to the sacred, what do I call it? The untouchedness of the earth. The degree to which it is undefiled, untouched, unaffected by man. Well, when you do an effect on something, there's different ways of looking at it, I mean, a kiss that blesses also can defile. Meaning based on dirt. It's just a contact thing. And it's also a question of perspective. Whether something is wanted or not. Whether something is right or wrong. Before Israel came into the land, you may remember that Moses talked about how that the land, the inhabitants defile the land, and the land is ready to vomit them out. And they were warned. The Israelites were warned. If you follow the same things, the land will also vomit you out. Because the land is acting as a proxy sort of for the Lord himself. It's his land. And when it's defiled, he's the one who's responding. He's the one who's saying, I don't like you defiling my land. It's not really about the land, but it is about a gift given in trust. You know what I mean? Meaning the gift isn't just given. A gift, a true gift is just given and nothing expected in return, and no expectation of, like if someone if I give someone a gift, I'm not going to check up on it a year later and say, well, what'd you do with that gift I gave you? It's rude. Maybe they re-gifted it. I don't know. Maybe it broke. Maybe it sucked. Maybe I don't need to inquire because the point was the gift, not my giving. But for people, sometimes it is the giving that gets very, important. But also, sometimes things are not just given as gifts, they're given in trust. For example, someone may give someone something for a particular purpose, like loan someone some tools, or even give someone something so they can do something with it. Like, for example, a parent may buy a child a car so they can go to work, or for some purpose. And it's the child's car, and it's theirs to use and to dispose of as far as their use, but the parent may retain title and also the right to say, you can't drive that now because it isn't really your car, it's really mine. I'm still holding on to it. I'm giving it to you, but I'm giving it to you in trust, not wholly. And there are many times like that where things are given in trust. Well, the land of Israel was given in trust to the Israelites, not just given to them. It's like, here, do with it as you please. No, it was, you will do with it and be a special people to me. And so the land given in trust was not given for just any purpose. It was given for them to live on as a holy people. When they did not live on the land as a holy people, they defiled the land. That means they made it dirty, unholy. And that's sort of like, get it away from the literal. But the idea of dirtiness and defilement and that. See, the idea of holy means things are separate. I mean, you might maybe just, for simplicity, you separate it from the dirt. You separate it from the dust. You separate it from all pollutions. It becomes holy. But also, it's more than just the idea of pollution. But it is separate and dedicated for a purpose. And it's a holy thing. It's distinct. Kept away and kept apart and kept clean and all that. It just depends on what holy can have. There's a lot of there's some leeway within the definition of holy of what it exactly looks like, because it's going to be holy to someone. Holy is not a purely objective thing; it's a subjective thing. It's like, that's why he can call certain things holiness to the Lord, because it just means that it's now dedicated to him, even though it belonged to the heathen 5 minutes ago. The goods of Tyre would be holiness unto the Lord. Now those goods are the same goods that brought Tyre to destruction, and the same covetousness after which many men destroy their lives, right? But they still can be holy if they're declared so. And so also, the Holy Land can become defiled if declared so. And the reason being given is here, because they've transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. So there's an aspect of man's activity which defiles. One second, I want some coffee. Well, that's And when it talks about, let me just talk about the curse here for a second. Therefore, hath the curse devoured the earth. The law contained in it curses. So if we fail to do these things, these curses will come upon us. We'll be cursed in the streets. We'll be cursed in the houses. We'll be cursed here. And it gave very specific things. The law is really interesting. It has interesting parts. For example, there's a curse in the law where it says, "Cursed be the man that smiteth his neighbor secretly." And all the people shall say amen. There are all kinds of things that men, what they did in the law, they would recite these curses. And they would curse people. Generally. And curse themselves, possibly. The reason was, a man smites his neighbor secretly. Because this, I actually quoted this to a Jew once, who had done us the dirty behind our backs. And he was kind of like, hey, he was trying to still do business with us. Like, what? Oh, I'm sorry. Playing stupid. And he quoted Jesus at me because he knew I was a Christian, which I never like, coming from someone who's not a believer. Like, don't quote my Lord to me. You don't know him, and you don't know how to quote him. It's not an effect. What I'm saying is, it's fine to quote my Lord to me if you want to, whatever, demonstrate to me how ignorant you are. But if you're trying to persuade me as an unbeliever, that's a dead end. You have no hope there. It's like you're hurting your cause. If you want to persuade me, do not start invoking Jesus. Unless you're another believer, then I will listen. I'm just saying, an unbeliever, do not tell me about the Lord, unbeliever. Do not lecture me about Jesus. I say it all the time, and it's like, no. I'm not listening to the lectures of unbelievers who do not know the Lord and spew a bunch of nonsense about what Jesus is, was, wants, whatever. And so he quoted this, he said, if the blind shall lead the blind, they both fall in the ditch. I mean, he meant because we didn't really know, he was suggesting that we don't really know, we're blind. We don't really know what's going on. And he didn't do what he seemed to do. And I said, well, this is what Moses wrote, because he was a Jew. And I'm like, oh, give me Jesus, I'll give you Moses. And maybe, whatever. Maybe he has the same attitude about people who quote Moses to him. I guess people don't generally quote Moses to him. Have you ever heard someone quote Moses ever? I mean, as far as in life, Cursed be the man that trusteth him, not trust him. Cursed be the man that smites his neighbor secretly. And all the people shall say amen. And the idea behind the curse is what? Well, if nobody knows what's been done, only God knows. And the idea of the curse is to invoke on yourself the punishment of God. If you should, because what happens is we all agree, yes, cursed be the one who smites his neighbor secretly. Cursed be that man. We all agree. And then one guy sneaks off and secretly, cuts a hole in his tent and steals his whatever. He does some sort of secret thing to his neighbor to hurt him. And nobody knows. So that's a loophole in the law, isn't it? That's a problem with law, right? As people get away with things, right? And in the Old Testament law, this is how they dealt with people getting away with things, was by invoking curses. And so there were all kinds of curses in Deuteronomy. I mean, in fact, let me just give you a little sample, okay? It seems like necessary. I think it's about Deuteronomy 28. Do I have to look it up, or can I just go there? First of all, I want to bring you all along. Doop, 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 boop, boo. All right, here we go. All right. Deuteronomy, big book. Chapter 28, maybe? Sure. Cursed, right? There's blessings and curses. Now, there's the blessing. See, if you will do everything I say, all these blessings will come upon you. But if you don't, see here, I say, cursed out thou be in the city. Verse 15 says, if you will not hearken unto the voice of the Lord, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes which I command thee this day, then all these curses will come upon thee and overtake thee. Cursed shalt thou be in this city, and cursed shalt thou be in the field. Cursed shalt be thy basket and thy store. But that's not actually the curses I was quoting. That is the cursings. Cursed shalt thou be, there is a curse. This is more like what Isaiah is talking about, the curse devouring the earth, right? But, I'm curious. Wait a second. There's the curse thing. Oh, it was just one chapter earlier. Yeah, here are the curses I was talking about, the judicial ones. Cursed be he that removeth his neighbor's landmark. Cursed be he that maketh the blind to wander out of the way. Cursed be he that perverteth the judgment of the stranger, the fatherless, and the widow. Cursed be he that, etc. Cursed be he that lies with all manner of beasts. And cursed incest, cursed mother-in-law. Okay, there's a lot of like, here's one I always like to quote. I like this one though. It's a good thing to know. Cursed be he that smiteth his neighbor secretly. A lot of people think there's not a lot. You think there's no law against certain things. You know what's funny? He sent us gifts after that. Not very nice, but he made a gesture, and I was like, pleased, because we didn't talk about it anymore. We didn't do business with him anymore. But you see, there's a lot of curses in this chapter. If you look here, that's the idea. Curses. Curses come about from God. They're the opposite of blessing. We want to be blessed, not cursed. Well, there are curses. And the earth itself can become cursed because of us and for our sake. It's not that the earth is really cursed, but the earth, here's the thing. The earth can take a dry spell and shake it off. Human beings will starve to death very quickly compared to the earth. The earth can take a year or two off. It'll come back. It'll come roaring back. You know what I mean? Even things like nuclear war will not destroy the earth. The earth will be cursed for our sake, though. We pollute it with nuclear war. I mean, we're not gonna live long under that. But the earth will come back. So when the curse devours, it's really for our sake. It's not that the planet itself is really cursed. It's just that the things So here's the thing: Earth doesn't care. Earth doesn't care if it's a desert. It doesn't care if it's an ocean. It doesn't care if it's green. It doesn't care if it's black. It just doesn't care. The earth does not have a preferred state. So if you want to sin and live in iniquity and have God curse the world for our sakes, the earth doesn't care. The earth doesn't care if it gets struck by meteors. The earth doesn't care if it's even here. We're always so, we gotta preserve the earth, and I'm not I'm not against preserving the earth for our sakes. But our ability to destroy it is only for our sakes and for the sakes of the animals that inhabit it with us, but mostly for the animals that are closest to us. The bigger ones, the big mammals are the ones most in danger from our activity. Though I suppose there's some other. I'm not an expert about these things, I used to be more into nature and science and stuff, but I have not the past couple of years been much into it at all. I confess. Too busy for that kind of leisure activity. There is a covenant God has made with his people, and they broke it. They transgressed. They changed the ordinances. The things that God ordains, the laws and such, like the things that said that were cursed. Cursed be the man. I can throw some new ones in. Cursed be the man that changeth his gender. Cursed be that man. I'm sorry, you're already cursed in some ways, but you can't. You just can't curse. And as we do it, you don't think the earth's going to be cursed for our sake? Oh, it will. As our nation descends into greater and greater abominations, really. I could say immorality. We've got, we always have, like I said, a lying tongue is an abomination, so don't get too freaked out when I say abomination. But in the sense of things being, the wrongness not being based so much on hurting things as so much as just being plain abominable on the individual level. Meaning, when someone lies, there's something abominable about that. The lie. Tell the damn truth. Sorry I said damn, but tell the truth. But we lie. But some lies are bigger than others. And some lies are worse than others. It's just true. Because, when I think about my life, my problem lying that I've had at times was mostly just to protect people I loved. I wanted to protect them from me. From lying about things so they don't hurt their feelings. Because as I'm struggling to be righteous, like when I would have trouble with drinking or drugs, I didn't want my wife to have to bear it. So I would be like, oh no, not tell the truth. But that doesn't help things when they can know you've been. And when they know anyways and they know you're lying, do you think that inspires confidence or love? I mean, they may love you anyways, but it doesn't increase love. Lies don't increase love. In fact, unless you have very strong love, they're likely to decrease love. I'm glad my wife's love for me was strong enough that her love never decreased, but it certainly never went up while I lied. You know? They never love you more while you lie. And you shouldn't lie. It's abominable. There's something, because you're distorting the world. You're distorting reality through what you're seeking to, you know what I mean? Like, there's something, when you manipulate people with lies, you know what I mean? It's one thing when you manipulate them to, like, I just want you to stay happy and it's not going to hurt you because I think in my heart I'm not going to do it again. Those white lies, the ones where you think you're being white. You're not really being white. You're still lying and you're not trusting people. And how can you say you love them? You don't trust them. But they have a certain good intentioned thing to them that we, when we look at that, when someone lies to us like that, it's not as offensive when someone lies to us to hurt us. You know what I mean? Like, this is perfectly safe, or whatever lie. There are some dark lies people tell to each other to get them, there are women getting lied to so they can get raped. There are men getting lied to so they can get, I was going to use the same verb, but I meant financially. You know what I mean? There's all kinds of there's men getting lied to get raped too, I guess, in that sense. But I meant more like in the sense of defrauded. People are being defrauded. They're being lied to. And it gets even worse. There's all kinds of places, like church. You get lied to in church. The damage done is terrible. And that's part of the problem, is that the laws, the ordinances, everything that God has said, the world is corrupting the churches. You can see it in the churches. They are approving of the things the world is doing. They're not standing as salt and light. You know what I mean? They're totally giving way to the world and making, it's like they're not ready to fight. Maybe they are, some of them. But they're giving in. Many churches where they will marry same-sex couples. And the only reason we're marrying, I don't have any big problem with that, except that that's not really why they're doing it. The reason they wanted to get married is, not they, I'm not talking about an individual, but there's a greater movement among the sexual perverts. The sexually perverted is what I meant. They wanted marriage so they could have it, so they could destroy it. Or so they think. Marriage is doing a good job destroying. I don't know why you need to marry same-sex couples to destroy marriage. I thought divorce was doing a good enough job as it is. The institution of marriage, here's the thing. You can't eliminate. I don't know how you could do. They're insane. They are insane. If they think they're going to, forbid? So, if I'm cohabiting with my wife, because they want to attack the institution of marriage. And this is an abomination in our earth right now that will cause the earth to be cursed, all right? For sure. So I don't feel like we're going that off. But I'm going to talk about it a little bit. And we have marriage. And they want to get rid of it. Okay, so what? You would get rid of the legal protections for marriage and get rid of all this, that, the other. You can get rid of everything you have power to get rid of. But you can't stop me and my wife from just being married. You can't stop her from obeying me. And me from saying to her, you must obey me. You know what I mean? They can't stop that relationship. They can't stop. They can't come with the police and say, no, you can't. You don't have to listen to him. Marriage is illegal. I don't even understand. I know what they mean by, they want to destroy it by undermining it. They want to actually get into, they want to make it so that that there's no specialness in society for marriage. And that they could probably do, where the world wouldn't treat it as special. But it'll just backfire, because that won't work. You know what I mean? Because if you outlawed marriage as like an institution, you know what I mean? Because basically what happens is when everyone can get married, no one will be able to get married. Don't you get that? Like how if you make it so you can marry anybody, then it undermines the very premise of the thing, indeed, that it's a special relationship. So, I mean, they can call it all the same thing, get all the same legal protections for this, but they can never equal it. I mean, they'll never raise children as well as I do. They'll never be able to do it because they do it wrong. All of the things being equal. Well, not all of the things. I mean, like, you don't, a lot of things they say you need for children, you don't need for children. People always like, couples like, oh, don't give me children until you have this, you have all this stuff. You need money for children. Nah, you don't need money for children. I mean, a bit, but I mean, you don't need lots. You just need enough to feed them and clothe them. But I mean, what I'm saying is, like, being rich doesn't make you raise your kids better. That's for sure. You only need so much money. You don't need to be rich. You know what I mean? When I say all things being equal, it's like, well, it's like you may have more money than me, but that doesn't make you a better parent. Though it's hard to be a parent without some money. If you don't have some resources, you may find yourself, having difficulty. Because, like, if you don't have the resources to be able to homeschool them and stuff, then it's like you have a handicap in raising them, because it is a handicap. If you got to outsource about 50% of your child's life to a public institution that is akin to a prison for children, basically, that's what school is. It's a prison for children. And that's how I look at it. I hated school, So all my children were home educated. So when the curse devours the earth, we who dwell here become desolate. And the inhabitants of the earth are burned, and few men left. I don't understand the burning. Where's that coming from? You know what I mean? It's like the world's going to be utterly emptied. It's defiled. The curse has devoured, burned. Well, here's what I would say. Now, I probably, before I even go look at the language, because I'm going to look in a second and see if there's any, see if there's anything to be said there in the language that would be insightful as to meaning. But I already see a way this, because the idea of a curse is the curse devouring. When I saw the word devour, I was like, oh, well, what else devours? Fire. It does. The flame devoureth. There's scriptures like that. I'm not going to show you a demonstration because then you're just going to take my word. Because it's not that important. But the fire devours. So if the idea of the curse is devouring like fire, now the inhabitants of the earth are burned. I get it. They're burned. They're all touched by it. The curse devours the earth. I mean, the idea is the curse overtakes everything. And so the inhabitants are burned as the curse, like a I want to say forest fire, but I want what's that? Not forest fire. What do they have in California all the time? It's not forest wildfires. So I want wildfire, not a forest. Forest fire is too simple. I want a wildfire. The curse, like wildfire, burns. It devours it goes through the land, much as the Assyrian army does. But that's where the idea of burning comes from, the devouring. Do I need to even go into the linguistic side of it? I mean, let me just see real quick. Burned. To be hot or scorched. To burn? Nah. Devour. To eat. Yeah, that's fine. Fire also eats. It consumes. It devours. No, we don't need to do any extra work there. That's fine. That's a connection of burning right there. I'm totally satisfied. Few men left. Because the curse promised to destroy men and to send them into captivity and to send them to death. So as the curse proceeds, men become scarce. That's the end game. You know what I mean? The end game of immorality is piles of bodies. Look at the flood of Noah. A lot of dead people. And not just the people who were the transgressors, but all the people suffered. Because we suffer because of the transgressions of the wicked all the time. I mean, meaning their evils. In fact, for some people, this is the whole explanation of evil is human agency. But that doesn't make any sense because for one, that's not the only kind of evil. That's why I have a study called Evil and the Purposes of God, because it does not answer the question. You can't answer the question, you can't answer the problem of evil by just invoking human agency, because it doesn't explain just earthquakes and stuff. Or a mountain exploding, like a volcano blowing up and killing a bunch of people. Or a meteor falling from the sky and conking you in the head, and doing you in that way. I know why I choose that and not a lightning bolt. I always have like a rock come out of the sky, because it's even more random. Because people get struck by lightning every year. How many people get hit by meteors? Probably not even one every year. It's probably more like one a decade. But people do occasionally get struck, I suppose, right? I know there was a story about a man's car being hit. One time I found a dent in an old car outside, and I was looking all over the place because I was certain it must have been a little meteor. Because it was about as big around as this. It was dented in on a car. I was like, where did this come from? And it looked so peculiar, I thought, because it reminded me of hail damage. Have you ever seen what hail damage looks like? It looks like this little dimple in the car. I mean, very subtle. I can show you my car. It has very light hail damage. Well, it made me think of like a lot bigger than that. Not huge, but I was looking around for a little metallic rock. I remember thinking I should get my metal detector out or something, but I didn't. The new wine mourneth, the vine languisheth, all the merry-hearted do sigh. The mirth of the tabrets ceaseth. The mirth of tabrets ceaseth. The noise of them that rejoice endeth. The joy of the harp ceaseth. They shall not drink wine with a song. Strong drink shall be bitter unto them that drink it. So now we have the wine mourning, the vine languishing, drooping. The idea of the mourn and droop is, an interesting thing. The whole land is in mourning, right? And now even the liquor is in mourning. It's a weird thing, right? And I do think it's very clear on the surface of it. We don't have to think too much here. There are two ways you can drink. Not two, but they're generally two, right? There's two ways. You drink for celebration and happiness, or to drown your sorrows. And some people drink to fight too, but we're not covering that one. But there are more than one ways that wine can be drank. And the reason the wine mourns is because of the occasion for which it is being brought out. See, that's why the wine is mourning, because it's an occasion for mourning. Because those who would make merry instead are sighing, right? The tabrets, the tambourines, and the drums, all that's stopping. And again, remember, we talked about in Revelation, the voice of pipers and the musicians shall be heard no more at all in the fall of Babylon. When the angel comes and takes up this mighty stone and casts it down, that's very much like what we're looking at here. The very similar language and types of symbolism. The new wine mourneth, the vine languisheth, all the merry-hearted do sigh, the mirth of the tabrets ceaseth, the noise of them that rejoice. All the rejoicing, the voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. They shall not, because that is the quintessential celebration. There's no more, you want to talk about a party where you're supposed to be happy, celebration, it's going to be wedding. Weddings are always cause for celebration. And what it's saying is there's no voice of that celebration. No voice, I'm talking about Revelation chapter 18. But here, they shall not drink wine with a song. No, they will drink wine. Strong drink shall be bitter, but they're going to drink it in the bitter tears of regret. You can. There's more than one ways to drink. You can drink happy. You can be a happy drinker, celebrating. Cut loose. Isn't it great? Or there's the kind of drinking that's just like, let me drink to forget all the horrors and sorrows of my life. And we're saying that's the only kind of wine you're going to have, is the kind that you drink with sorrow. And it's really just a device. Of course, wine doesn't itself take on any characteristics though I remember there's always people who act as if they do. I remember Bill Cosby had a comedy routine where he talked about the different kinds of drunks, and there's like this is the beer guy, and this is the wine guy, and this like there's some sort of, and so people think there's like differences. It's all the same garbage. It's all ethyl alcohol as far as I know. There's no subtle terpenes or whatever. I don't know. The city of confusion is broken down. I don't remember if that's is that, I remember if there was like the word here in this is worth mentioning. Well, sort of. I mean, some people it's going to be like this is the kind of thing you may be interested in as far as studying the Bible and the languages. City of Confusion. Oop, I clicked on it, but that's not where it was. City of Confusion, right? Well, in Hebrew here, here's the City of Confusion. 84:14, tohu. Anyone who's studied the Bible much as far as with Hebrew should probably recognize that it's the passage from Genesis 1 verse 2. In fact, it's right here in the Englishman's Concordance. The earth was, oops, I just clicked on NAS. I didn't want to do that. The earth was formless and void. So in the King James, the earth was without form and void. Tohu vabohu. And the word is not used, I mean, it's used plenty of places more than that, but it's the same word. The one I always think of is the line of confusion. A lot of times it's translated confusion a couple times, but it's not really a good translation. I think desolation would be better. A lot of times they use the word vain, futile, waste, without form. The idea of confusion of being like a confused, formless thing. But it does, it says formlessness, confusion, unreality, emptiness. So those are all the because like we have words that are technically synonyms, right? But that we wouldn't use them in the wrong context. And I'm trying to think of one off the top of my head. And it's not going to come to me. Because it's usually in the moment that I notice this, we have words like happy, glad, joyful, merry, and if I say someone's happy and they're merry, there's a difference there. There's a difference. Merry. If I say someone's merry, what I'm saying is, you know that there's a connotation of like an outward thing. He's merry implies he is showing off how happy he is. He's making merry. He's a very merry fellow. You say that. If you say he's a very happy fellow, it might be outward, but you don't know. It could be inward. If you could say, you could be looking at a guy who's frowning and you say, but he's a very happy man. I know this for a fact. It's like, he looks so grumpy. That's funny because he's so happy. You know what I mean? So, though you can look happy, what I'm saying is words have connotations which make them inappropriate in certain contexts. And maybe those weren't the best examples, but you will stumble across some in your life for sure, where you realize, words that are, like if I get a book of a thesaurus out, right, and you look at synonyms, you'll notice that a lot of them are not exactly right. They're just kind of similar words. You know what I mean? They're not always precise fits because not all words are interchangeable. And also there's a certain efficiency of language whereby we use words for very specific things because it makes it more efficient. You can't, if you have one word that refers to too many things, that requires too much explanation. So this word tohu carries with it several meanings, shades of meanings, but generally means waste. And that's what we can assume it means here. the city of waste is broken down. Or the wasted city is wasted. The idea is that the formless city is made formless. That's the idea there. All right, where's my words? The city of confusion just does not cut it here. I don't think confusion is what we want. They have a specific word for confusion, like for actual confusion. But I forget what that one is. For actual confusion. It can mean confusion, to actually be confused. I think they have an actual word. That's the kind of thing you can look up and check out for yourself. I'm not going to that seems like too much to... the value is not that good. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. Yeah, all that, that is... Like it says, you fortified the wall... You broke down the houses. You didn't look to the maker. They shut up their houses. What it is the city, when it's, the houses are all boarded up and closed, because that's what you do. When the city's under attack, they get ready. They close everything up. Close everything up as much as possible. Try to protect your home. They break down the walls. They come in and strip it. And the houses may still be shut up, because that's after it. Also, the thought of after a siege, what's left? Yeah. Like you go to this, there's a siege, a battle, right? They come through, the city's destroyed. Then the people who are left behind come out and they're looking like all the houses are shut because a lot of the people are gone. There's still some people, right? And so there's a cry. They're looking for... Anybody see wine? They're looking for wine. Everywhere they can find wine. That's what they really want. Because they want to get drunk. In the midst of all the devastation, they just want to get drunk. They want to drown their sorrows in wine. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. And the city is left desolation, and the gate is smitten with destruction. The gate is that which protects... that which shuts out the outside world, that which, maintains the integrity of the city. And if the gates be destroyed, or as the foundations be destroyed, what can the righteous do? If the gates be broken down, who shall defend the city? A gate is necessary. A city without a gate, a nation without borders, is wide open to destruction, and will be. When thus it shall be in the midst of the land among the people, there shall be as the shaking of an olive tree, and as the gleaning grapes when the vintage is done. 2 or 3 berries in the top of the uppermost bough, 4 or 5, and the outmost fruitful branches thereof. There's always a few berries left. That's the thing. And I look at that in Revelation also, that the world, it says there's going to be all this devastation, destruction. The Lord's going to come, and there's going to be a great battle. But there will be people left over alive. You can count on it. And I think that's where the millennial population is going to come from. Because it doesn't make sense to have a kingdom with no subjects. You know what I mean? Because there's a very specific kingdom that's supposed to come into being. At least the way I look at it. I'm a millennial. I believe in the millennial reign of Christ. Not everyone does, and that's all right. I don't want people to get too, don't get too... I don't think it should be such a distraction, because we should be... I think we should be able to agree on Christianity as far as how we ought to live our Christian lives without reference to the millennium. I mean, what you think about that shouldn't impact what we're talking about in terms of how human beings need to live their lives. Shouldn't. It could, though. Because people might make such a big deal about it that it becomes like, oh, well, that is something we have to be mindful of. Like, what does it say? Well, what... well, it can be significant if you are preparing for it, or let's say, I don't know, if you're taking actions that are exclusively for that, Or just we can mistakenly, through like my, like people will say like, when I was young, I was very anti-rapture. I still am anti-rapture, but I was but I was very, let's say, I was genuinely worked up about it. It was something that bugged me that people believed in the rapture. I wanted to go and have an impact on that. So I did things like I recorded Ezekiel 13, which I thought was, it's not talking about the rapture, but it's talking about the mentality of people who are who don't want to face tribulation. Because that's a weird thing that we have in Christianity now, people who think that tribulation's not for them. Specifically, the Great Tribulation. But tribulation, small t, is for you. The Great Tribulation, you're right, it isn't for you. It's not your tribulation. But you're part of it. In fact, I expect if I should live to be in the end times, the tribulation that is for the world includes me. I'm part of the trouble. I'm part of the trouble. The prophets of God are trouble. Look at the prophecy, what it says. They'll be smiting the earth with plagues, prophesying. And then when they kill them, they're going to be rejoicing over it because they grieve them so much. So the prophets and the two witnesses that I make mention of are, it says prophetically in the book of Revelation that the two candlesticks, or the seven candlesticks, are the seven churches. And by the time you get to chapter 11, there's only two candlesticks left. And that's the two witnesses. They are the candlesticks. That's the easiest prophetic symbolism you will ever run into. And for some reason, people still screw it up. How is it that I can be 47 years old and believe that I may have been the first person to think of that? That's absurd. Well, if it is, it's because God has hidden things from people's eyes. I mean, because it's easy for God for thousands of years to hide something in plain sight. Of course. That's very easy. I mean, there's all kinds of things people just don't get, like about how knowledge works. Like, for example, I don't know why I bring this up. It just makes me think of this. Because people don't understand. Like when I was a kid, dinosaurs were all dragging their tails on the ground. And at some point in the 90s, they decided, oh, no, their tails are actually balanced in their bodies and should be held upright. And they walk more like that. No one's ever seen a dinosaur walk, though I believe they're right. I believe we had it wrong. But how could modern people who know so much and who should be able to tell and should look at it and say, that can't be right, how did we get it wrong for so long? When they look so much obviously better. I mean, no one bothered to draw two dinosaurs to compare and say like, hey, maybe they didn't walk like that. Maybe that's not how they got around. With their tails dragging on the ground and standing just totally upright, walking on those two legs, Tyrannosaurus was like standing almost erect. And that's why the knowledge of man is very limited. And so you can stare at prophecy for centuries and not pick up on the fact that the two witnesses are the two candlesticks, weirdly. And it's not because I'm special that I know this. It's just I happen to be one of them. Probably at the same time, hundreds of people this was shown to them, revealed to them. It was revealed. It's not just revealed to me. Because I believe that no prophecy is private. That there's no way I would just know this. But the thing is, I've gotten to 47 years and I've never run into anyone else who said, oh yeah, I came up with that too. Yeah, you're right. I mean, as far as that's what the Lord gave me. I don't mean it's like my own personal, I'm just saying, it's like, I remember looking around, I've taught it for a long time and I looked at one point and I couldn't find anything. People are still hung up on Moses and Elijah. That's because they go to school. That's what school does to you. It teaches you to give the expected answer. And that's the thing is that in religion, they feel like there's nothing new to learn. There's nothing. That's why not, denominations. I mean, Martin Luther figured everything out. Why go beyond Lutheranism? Why go beyond Calvinism? Why not stick with what they did centuries ago? The wise reformers or the wise apostles. Well, that's the thing. Someone goes like, oh, we're an apostolic church. We follow the apostles. The apostles lived 2,000 years ago. What do you know about the apostles? You're a liar. You're following that dude who leads your church is what you're doing. And hopefully he's filled with the Spirit of God and teaching you the right things. Because then, you know what, you can follow because you're following the Spirit of God. Now, you know, everyone's got to follow a bit. And if you don't know anything about the Bible, you should probably listen to me for a bit until you've gotten a full, and then you should step back and look at what I'm saying from your new perspective of knowledge and see if there are blind spots that I have. You know, I mean, I've had people talk to me. I'm not without feedback. I certainly offer. I gotta check my email once in a while. Oh, I just realized I haven't, I'm not gonna do it now. That's not what you do, Paul. Don't do that. But I should, just to know where we are question-wise, if there are any more. The last question I got was someone saying, do you have any resources for new believers? Which left me like feeling like, well, no, not really. And my wife would be like, what are you talking about? All your Bible studies. And she's right. But something specifically geared to new believers, like something where I could introduce them like in a very concise manner. No, we don't have it. Anyways, whatever you believe about the millennium is not really important. What we believe about Jesus is. But if we believe things about the millennium and we make them important, because this is what I was getting to the whole time, when I talk about the rapture, it's not, I don't mind if people believe in the rapture, if they're Christians, they think there's a rapture. Okay. I think it's problematic and there's issues, but if you're a sincere believer, all other things being equal, meaning, you know, your prayer life and your faith, let's just say your faith. I'm not going to measure your prayer life, but your faith is real. Right? That's all we really need. You have real faith. Then that's fine. I mean, it's not fine. It's not good, but it's like, I don't have everything straight either. You don't have to have it all straight. But here's the thing. If you take that rapture and it's a false doctrine, you start pushing it. And then people I've had people who don't believe it, who believe in the rapture, suggest to me that because I don't believe in the rapture, I will be left behind and probably go to hell. Now that is a problem. Now your false doctrine is significantly problematic because you've taken something that should be a issue that maybe we could discuss or have some disagreement over, but that is not critical to our essential faith. I mean, it is not critical as long as we understand the return. You know, we believe in the returning of Christ, the resurrection, the things as long as the other beliefs are all in the line. You know what I'm saying? Then someone believing in the rapture, or maybe they believe their loved ones go straight to heaven and they're there right now and they're watching over us, peering out of the portals of heaven and all this death mythology. You can have that too. Especially if you're not a teacher, it's not going to be particularly important because it's just something you believe that's incorrect and that in due time can be sorted out by the Lord. It's not going to affect your faith in God. It's not going to affect your prayer life necessarily unless you're praying about it all the time, which people don't. If you just think there's a rapture and you're just praying to God about other things, you know, the things that are needful, the gifts of the Spirit, the things that improve our walk, the things that draw us closer to God, those are the things we should emphasize. But if we're emphasizing things that shouldn't be emphasized, you know, like, and making them central, then they become central. You know what I mean? Like the rapture doctrine, that belief is not a central belief to people. And as long as it is this sort of off on the edge thing where it belongs, it's fine. But when people bring it into the core of belief, they start making division with people who don't have that in their core. And it becomes a dangerous piece of false doctrine. Because when you emphasize certain things to the exclusion of others, just like, and honestly, I think sometimes people with prophecy, it's the same thing because they get way too embroiled in the prophecy and the decoding, and they think, you know, I mean, like they start treating it like it's like this game. There's clues being left, and you got to decipher this, and it's all this weird, they're using numbers and computers trying to sort things out, you know. But you're not actually just listening to God anymore. You're in some sort of weird land of Sherlock Holmes mystery world, and it's not the mysteries of Christ; it's the mysteries of men. Meaning there's this, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, there's too much unessential and external things. Well, and it can cause people to trip up. Because, you put these things set front and center in your doctrine, they're different. They take on a different character as front and center. You know what I mean? You believe the dead are in heaven and all that. If that's just what you think when you go to a funeral or whatever, or just in your, but that, like I said, it doesn't affect anything else, then it's not very important. But if you make it a central thing and you're zealous about it and pushing it, it can be a big problem. Just like, here's the thing. Me believing the truth, me denying the rapture and saying, no, there's just a resurrection. And the rapture is just an aspect of the resurrection. People have splintered off into a separate doctrine. But really all that happens is when Christ comes, he raises the dead, and then we are changed, who are still alive. And the dead are raised incorruptible, we are changed, and we meet the Lord in the air as he's returning to the earth. Like, he's coming to earth, and we meet him halfway. That's all it is the being caught up together in the clouds. Harpazo, there's your whole rapture. It's just a part of the resurrection. They took that and they split it off in time. They did all these kinds of things with it. Right? And when that's off in the boondocks of your doctrine, no big deal. But here's the thing. Now, for me, if I make opposition to the rapture central to my teachings, I can also become a false teacher because in the sense of I've got my focus on the wrong thing. You can, just by getting your focus on the wrong thing, it can be bad. I mean, you got the wrong idea, even if you've got the right doctrine. But if you put it at the wrong place of importance, it's just like with all the Judaizers they got tassels, and they got a little tassel on their garment. They don't wear wool and cotton mixed. They do all the little commandments of the law. But that righteousness can become unrighteousness because it's replaced at the center of our teaching everything that Christ has done. You know what I mean? Because Christ laid down his life to free us from the law. And to bring people back into bondage is like to spit in his face. Now, if you're wearing a tassel and following the Old Testament commandments as part of your faith that exists off in a corner, and it's a very small part of who you are as a believer, there's nothing wrong with it. Nothing wrong at all with not eating pork and following the guidelines of the law or observing a Saturday Sabbath. Nothing wrong at all. Until you come to me and say, I'm a sinner for not obeying your Saturday Sabbath and for eating bacon. Now you're a false teacher. And so, no, I'm not. I know the truth. You're a false teacher. I'd be a false teacher. If I spend an hour a day railing against the rapture, I'm a false teacher. Because I've got the wrong focus. I should not be focused on just slamming the rapture. People who believe in the rapture are deceived. They're going to worship Satan. They're all this, the rapture, the evil rapture doctrine, these people who believe it. And then I turn you and you look around and you're like, oh, look at those people believe. And you become consumed with your brethren. Consumed with people who believe in the rapture. Oh, they're so messed up who believe in the rapture, these people. They don't have the right doctrine. And I'm getting all worked up about people I can't. Look, I found another rapper. I used to record people on TV like the preachers find the incriminating bits of things, where they say things. I'm like, look at, he's a false teacher. I remember I used to think Benny Hinn, I used to record him and look for, I would listen to his words. So he's not a big rapture guy, but because he's a false healer. I was always watching to see where he would doctrinally go south. Because I was certain they would. And there's nothing wrong with watching doctrine or listening to people preach. And like when you listen to me, you should listen attentively. And if you hear something amiss, you should think amiss and question it. You know what I mean? Even if maybe I'm right in the end, but you should question it and find out. I can't spend my whole life just railing against falseness. Because it's really not the essence of what we need to be doing. We need to learn from the Lord. We need to build up our, like I need the fortitude in myself to face down the enemy and to, in the midst of all the seductions of the world, to maintain my integrity in Christ against whatever weapon the enemy forms against me. It's like I have to, they can't prosper. The weapons of the enemy cannot prosper against me. I mean, that's my position. I can't allow that. God can't allow it. And I'm going to cooperate with him in not allowing it. I mean, I have to, does it require my cooperation? Well, he can make me cooperate, but cooperation is good because I'm going along with what God wants. Jesus says, not as I will, but as thou willst. My will can go sideways from God's will, and does. That's normal, because even Jesus himself couldn't keep, his will was going sideways from God's will. I think maybe I don't want to be crucified, actually. Now that I'm sitting here staring it in the face, Lord, is there another way, Father? Is there another way? Because if there's another way, let's do that instead. Because this sucks, what I'm about to go through. Looking down the barrel of a gun, man. Jesus knew exactly what was coming. Omniscience can be a real pain. I know, because I'm nowhere near omniscient, but knowing too much, much sorrow, much learning made you mad, Paul. They said to Paul the Apostle. And I feel the same way sometimes. Too many thoughts grieve the heart. It's just too much thinking grieves the heart, man. It's good. I like being intelligent, but there's territory that comes with it that is sometimes grievous. People say like, "Oh, you can talk so much." Yeah, the internal world is also very loud. Inside the head, it is also very loud in here, all the time. There's a lot of talking going on, and it's not always good, and sometimes it's grievous. That's just the way it is. It's a part of learning to live, learning to obey, learning to walk in this world, in the sight of God, according to the gifts given us. The gifts and calling of God are without repentance, but it takes something. We have to put something into it. The talents are not just handed out and then they magically produce. They don't just magically produce. Thou wicked and slothful servant, you should have at least given it to those who given it to the bankers, so I could have had mine with usury. God expects us to take the love and kindness he has shown us and the faith he has given us and to turn it into something even better. He expects this of it. We know. We can read in the gospel. There's an expectation, kids. According to the gifts given us, thankfully. We don't have to return more, but we can't just do nothing. There are no nominal Christians in heaven. None. They're all full of zeal that dwell there. I mean, you don't have to be the same. You don't have to all be mind blowing. Just because I do this thing every day, don't think like every moment of my life is just filled with this zealous forward pressure. I find it just difficult as everyone to move forward sometimes. When thus it shall be in the midst of the land among the people, there shall be as the shaking of an olive tree, the gleaning grapes. Okay, the reason I mentioned that all was because of the millennium. You can be an amillennialist and still be a true believer, but I'm not. And therefore, when God shakes the world, like he did Israel in the ancient times, there will be a remnant. This remnant is, I believe, in the end times, going to be the progenitors of those who inhabit the millennial reign. And they will be given gifts of long life and such. But it explains why after 1,000 years, there are no, but Satan is able to appear and deceive people. Because I think that for 1,000 years, the people who saw Jesus appear the first time will all have died off. And after Jesus returns, I believe he's going to go into Jerusalem and he's going to stay there for 1,000 years and not really come out much. And so much so that people, when Satan appears, will question his existence again, even though he's on earth. And I will be able to go in there and see him. Because he won't be seeing everybody. I mean, he won't be seeing everybody who's alive. I mean, when he comes to judge the world, I don't know. You know, the reason I'm saying that is because of things I read in Ezekiel. But see, this millennial stuff is very touchy, and I could be very wrong. So take it with a grain of salt. See, I add that there so you know that's not central doctrine. And so you know I'm not pushing something into the center of your faith that doesn't belong there. Because that's important. You becoming, you know, I remember a while ago, a friend of mine who also came out of the Shepherd's Chapel told me he was an amillennialist and some other stuff. And he was a Calvinist, and so he took on amillennialism because that's usually part of the package. Because I'm, you know, as people, I've been accused of being a Calvinist. I'm not. Definitely not. But I've been accused because I similarly, I believe in things like tulip, you know, I said tulip, but now I'm going to be like, what's tulip, Paul? Well, I know it's what the Calvinists believe. It's I forgot, total depravity is T. Man is depraved, unable to help himself. We can't save ourselves. That's what total depravity means. It means we have a depraved nature that cannot save ourselves. U is what? Universal something. I forgot. L is limited atonement. I know that because I believe in the limited atonement. I forgot what the I stands for. P is for predestination. But anyways, I believe in a lot of things that the Calvinists believe in. Maybe not the same way, and I didn't get there the same way. I say tulip, I believe similarly. I haven't analyzed that enough to know that, like, yeah, you can just go that and then you're having the same beliefs I do. I don't know. But I do know they're amillennial. But that isn't part of tulip, see? There's no, tulipa and amillennialism. Even predestination is a bit of a, you don't have to understand it to be saved by any means. I mean, we just have to have faith in Christ and know who he is to a sufficient degree that we're not putting our faith in a Christ that is so just different from the real one that it's like we're believing in a false Christ of our imagination. Because we often do read into God whatever we want. We read into Christ, he's our Christ. You know, we make Jesus into our Jesus. You know, like the Buddy Jesus that was popularized in that movie, the Buddy Christ. You know, he's like, you know, and because that is kind of the way man has been going with Christ, as he becomes more and more our creature, more and more our pet. We've domesticated Jesus, you know, and turned him into, you know, his hair is always shampooed and conditioned. He's always wearing a white tunic with a blue sash for some reason. I don't know why Jesus always has a blue sash on it. It's never once described. But he's always wearing a white with blue. I didn't even know if people dressed that way back then. You know what I mean? I don't know. Is that an accurate costume? Was bleached white a common color people would wear? You know, they usually put them in brown these days in the movies, but in the drawings it's always pretty. Well, after his resurrection he'd be in white, you know. But I mean, the walking the earth thing. Whatever. Oh, time's up. 10 minutes over. But that idea of shaking in the vintage, the idea is that there's leftovers. That's the idea. You shake the olive tree, there's always some left. You can, you know, I go out and shake the berries for my wife out of the tree, right? Shake, shake, shake. We'll get a lot of berries to fall. If we do that, shouldn't like, we're probably not going to do it, but whatever, I'm just saying. We've done it. We shake the tree, but you never shake them all out. There's always a few. Even when you come in, you know, even when Jesus comes to the Battle of Armageddon, the blood's going to run to the horses' bridles. But there'll be a couple people who don't get killed. You know, there'll be people who left over who are not dead. I'm saying in Revelation, it never says everyone's killed. There'll be a lot of people left alive who are not changed. Because it says the dead in Christ will be raised, and then we who are alive and remain will be changed. We who are the believers. If you look at the context, it never says anything about changing unbelievers. So what's going to happen to them? They're going to remain unchanged. Yet not, on some level, I'm not sure, because I'm never sure exactly how to fit in that Matthew 23 or 25 judgment. Matthew 25 judgment, the sheep and the goats. It's always thrown me off a bit. It's always the passage that gives me the most pause. Because it's the amillennialist strongest argument. It's not particularly strong, though. I've gone over it before. And if you're curious about that subject, and wrapping up, we'll pick it up with verse 14 next time. That's a nice 10 verse we got through. That's good. I want to point you in the direction of my website, oraclesofgod.org, which I always promote in the beginning of the study, but here we are on oraclesofgod.org. And if you look, we're on the page that's called Studies. Click on the Studies button, it'll take you here. And the single subject studies on the left-hand side, I'm mumbling, I'm just tired. I don't have energy to talk anymore. But here we have some good studies that I did, audio studies. And the cool thing about these studies, they're edited, so they're just jam-packed. Unlike this study, and people have said these studies are jam-packed too, that's great. But these are edited. That means if I go quiet for any length of time, or if I forget something, you know what I did? I cut that out and just got to the part where I got to the point. Isn't that awesome? That's why these audio studies, even the old ones, I gotta say, I probably improved as a teacher, but man, you will have concise studies. And Romans in only 12 hours. That's just less than an hour per chapter. I mean, that's crazy for my money. Philippians in 4.5 hours. I mean, goodness. I've been slower, I confess. How long did it take me to do Revelation? Matthew, I didn't say. I didn't write down how many. I can click on it, but you can click on the links and it'll take you to the page with the study. You can download them or listen to them. I have them in pieces because this was done back in the time when I started my website, not just started, but I mean, when I was doing the Bible studies back in 2009, I still had like a 56K connection with a modem. So, but I wanted to point out to you, where is it? Millennium, study number 19. An hour-long study. I go into the Millennium a bit, and I recommend that one if you're interested in the subject, because because the return of Christ is a big, important subject. The millennium will come up because it's the next thing that happens. The cool part is we don't have to know what's going to happen in the millennium because there's no actual thing for us to do prior to it that, you know what I mean? Like, I have responsibilities here on the earth. I got to know my Lord. I got to preach the gospel. I got to be a believer. I got to shine as a light in the midst of a wicked and perverse generation, right? There's things to do. But for the millennium, there's really nothing to do except teach other believers. So let's be careful about how we teach that. Let's not alienate other believers. That's my thing. It's like when I try to talk about that stuff, I'm trying desperately not to alienate people that disagree with me over that, because that's not where I want you to be offended. You know, I just don't. And if you could not be offended about my millennialism, and my premillennialism, I should say, well then, you know, we can have a great study. And hopefully I won't beat it to death and drive people away by talking about it too much. But it's worth talking about in the sense of talking about, can we get along? Because I do think that while, you know, I used to say any false doctrine is wrong. Well, that's true. But like, where is it sitting? How important is it? Because there can be a realm of I'm not sure, and you're not a heretic for not being sure. You know what I mean? It's not heresy to say, I don't know for sure what the millennium is going to be, but here's what I think. That's not heresy. Here's what the scripture says. That's not heresy. Now, it might be heretical itself, like meaning the belief is actually wrong. You know what I mean? But the fact that I'm prefacing it, because I mean, if I had said, I'm not sure if Jesus exists, well, then you'd know I didn't have faith, right? You know what I mean? And so I'm also not putting my faith in this by saying, you know, I don't know for certain. I believe in a premillennial return of Christ, and I believe in a 1,000-year reign, literally, of Christ. I think that's right. But I don't consider it essential doctrine where I say this is the truth, like Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That's the truth. Jesus died for your sins. That's the truth. And if you argue me with on that, and if you deny that, I'll deny you. I'll say you're not a believer. I'll reject you from my fellowship if you deny the Lord Jesus. You know what I mean? Simple, right? The doctrine, like, that's heresy. There are some things over which you can't be brothers because you're supporting them in a belief that is unprofitable, that's hurtful to them. Now, you believe the wrong things about Christ in a certain way, it destroys your faith because you're not really believing in the true Christ. It's like if we distort reality so much, we get this false impression. And that's why we got to segregate things that are not essential. They should be segregated. It's important. The millennium is an important piece of doctrine that you should know about. And I recommend my study. It'll give you an overview. But you should know about it. And that way, And you should know enough to be able to say like where it stands in your belief. All right, I'm not gonna beat it to death. That's enough. Thanks for joining this study. I'll be back tomorrow to close out the week.
For he put on righteousness as a breastplate and a helmet of salvation on his head. And he put on the garments of vengeance for clothing and was clad with zeal as a cloak. According to their deeds will he repay fury to his adversaries, recompense to his enemies. To the islands he will repay recompense, so shall they fear the name of the Lord. From the west in his glory, from the rising of the sun, when the enemy shall come in like a flood. The Spirit of the Lord shall raise a standard against him, and the Redeemer shall come to Zion.
Kids play area.
Voice in it?
No, we go back.
হয়েছে না?
না।
হয়েছে না?
না ওইটা রাখ।
আর একটা হয়েছে।